Week 2, Day 3, Research Information Gathering. There's one main key term that you should know about research, and it's research design. This is the overall strategy to integrate the different components of a study in a coherent and logical way. It's basically the blueprint for the collection, measurement, and analysis of data. There are two main types of research designs that we'll discuss. The first one is primary research. By definition, this is data collected for the research purpose at hand. So basically, primary research is research that you conduct yourself for a particular purpose. So for example, surveys, focus groups, interviews, observations, and experiments. These are all research methods that you go out and collect the data. You do interviews or observations or experiments. One of the advantages of this type of research, it's specific to your needs and you control it. The disadvantage is it costs more and it takes longer. The second type of research is secondary research. This is data that's already collected that is analyzed for the purpose at hand. So this research or information is already gathered for a different purpose, but the data can be used for your purpose. So examples of that would be like the U.S. Census. That's done every 10 years. So that data is already collected and you may be able to use that data or part of that data for your research, or a stock market information, company data like employee time cards and sales figures, blog postings, magazines, and things like that. One of the advantages of this method is it's cheap because the data is already collected, and it's quick because the data is already collected. The disadvantage is it could be too old of data or not specific enough for your needs. So if you're getting like employee data for the research you're doing, it may not quite be the data that you need from the employees. So that would be a disadvantage. So outside of that, there are two methods of conducting research within the primary and secondary research. Qualitative is the first. Qualitative data is often words, more often than not, that summarizes subjectively as opposed to mathematically. So, example of that would be a focus group. A group of people assembled to ask about their perceptions, opinions, beliefs, and attitudes toward a product, service, concept, advertisement, ideal, packaging, etc. You may have participated in a focus group before where you get together and you talk about something in particular. So the reason why it fits under this category is because if I'm the researcher of this focus group, I have to record what you all say in the focus group and summarize it subjectively. So it's no numbers involved. I have to basically interpret what you guys talked about and how you felt about whatever the topic was at hand. Same thing with interviews. An interview is a conversation between two or more people where questions are asked by the interviewer to elicit perceptions, opinions, beliefs, and attitudes toward the same as the focus group: product, service, concept, advertisement, etc. So in this case, if you're not quoting the person you're interviewing directly, which you try not to do when you're writing up a research report, you have to interpret what they're saying or gather all the answers that they said and interpret it in a narrative format. Another one of those type of methods of qualitative is ethnography. This is a scientific study of human culture and or communities where the researcher becomes part of the culture and or the community being studied. So this is like if I want to study, if I'm doing ethnography and I want to study college students, I'll enroll in a college and act like I'm a student to be able to study them. Or joining a gang to study gangs, or becoming a waitress to study servers. That's ethnography. Netnography is a branch of ethnography performed on the internet. So this would be like joining a group online to study that group, or play games online to do research about playing games online or something like that. And so both ethnography and netnography, just like the other three we just discussed, you interpret the results. There's no numbers involved. It's all about the words. Observation. Observation is a scientific study of human culture or communities where there is no interaction with the subject. So this is the opposite of ethnography. Ethnography, you join the group that you're studying. Observation, you sit back and you watch. So that falls under observation in social media, is social media monitoring. So this is systematically searching and tracking what users are saying and on the internet about your brand or your organization. This can be very labor intensive and time consuming. Your book lists several tools for searching conversations online, like blog posts, who's talking, social mention, and things of that nature. And then you have brand mentions as a type of observation, and it's one of the most common searches used for research online. And basically, this is how many times a brand is mentioned, and it's used to measure brand buzz or viral spread. So let's take a look at an example of qualitative research. So if we were doing a qualitative research on this oil painting, we would describe it using words in a subjective way. So such as, the colors are blue and green with the white frame. Somebody else, because it's subjective, may say the colors are green and red and with the beige frame. So that's why it's subjective. Another thing you could say is it smells old and musty. If you're standing in front of it, it's an old painting. Or the texture shows brush strokes of oil paint. Let's see what else. Peaceful scene of the country and masterful brush strokes. So that would be qualitative research. All described in words, and it's my interpretation of it. Okay, so let's move on to the next one, quantitative. Quantitative is numerical data that can be plugged into like a spreadsheet and analyzed with statistical methods. So this would be something like surveys. A survey is an investigation of the opinions or experience of individual people based on a series of questions. So I'm sure you've done a survey, or it could be an online survey, a paper survey. And what the researcher does is take the answers that you gave and put numbers to them and enter them into a statistic program and analyze the data. And if you have an open-end question where you actually have to write a sentence or something, that's analyzed in a different way. Experiments fall in this category, and this is testing specific variables. You usually have a hypothesis in a controlled environment or out in a natural setting, but usually it's in a controlled environment. So let's look at this oil painting again. If we were doing quantitative research on the same oil painting, we would describe it using absolute numbers. So, such as this picture is 10 by 14 inches. The frame is 14 by 18 inches, or it weighs 8.5 pounds. The surface area of the painting is 140 square feet. It costs $300. So everything is numbers that can be entered and analyzed in a statistical manner. Here's an example of an experiment, which is quantitative data. Example of an effective online experiment. In his first presidential campaign, Obama used A/B testing to optimize his campaign donation page. Some website visitors would see one image and the others at random would see a different image. The web page team was able to measure which image was resulting in more donations, and they could quickly decide to use the one more favorable to all users. So, by employing this simple market research experiment on which the website image performed better, Obama was able to maximize contributions in a major way. So, this would be considered an experiment, and the numbers are counted by how many people donate when they're on each one of the pages. So that's a very basic, simple experiment. Another method is content analysis. A content analysis is a method for summarizing any form of content by counting various aspects of the content. So the example I'm going to use is the experiment a content analysis that I worked on a few years ago. I did a content analysis on branded product placement trends, and here are some of the results that I found. So in this content analysis, we took the top 50 shows over a whole year period, and they were rated top by Nielsen rating. And we watched them and we did a content analysis every time we saw a brand product placement, and this includes if they speak it or if they use the brand or if the brand is sitting in the background. And the point was to find what are the trends, what do we see going on here. One of the things that we found was there was a brand placement on an average of every 5.2 minutes. Also, as you can see here, the type of placement, 40% of the placements were verbal only. So where the character said the brand, but you didn't see the brand. And then you go down to visual foreground. So it might be sitting on a table while the characters are talking, and then visual background, which is the opposite, and then you have visual and verbal. So that's one of the results we found, or two other results. And here's another trend. I also found of the 16 location settings, more brands were placed in the main character's place of work. And so that was at 32.4%. And then as you see, the next one is outdoors. And then it kind of evens out after that. So that would be an example of a content analysis. Basically, you're counting things and then you're analyzing using descriptive data what you found. Okay, let's talk about sampling. One of the key terms in sampling is population. These are the units that we're interested in studying. So, for example, students enrolled at a university like JMU or a particular course like SMAD 242. This would be our population. So let's go with, the students enrolled at a university. We have 20,000 students at JMU, and that is our unit of interest. Say you wanted to study United States senators or congressmen. How about Facebook users or Twitter users? Imagine how many there are. Presidents and CEO of Fortune 500 companies. So these are examples of populations that you might be interested in studying. Units are the individual components within a population. When we are interested in a population, it is often impractical to try and study the entire population. For example, if the population we were interested in studying was Facebook users in the United States, this could be millions and millions of users or units. So instead, we have to do a sample of the population. If we choose to study these Facebook users using structured interviews, it could take a lifetime. So therefore, we choose to study just a sample of the Facebook users. So, for example, a sample of 500 versus 5 million Facebook users, or 250 versus 250 Facebook users. But how do you know how many to choose? So you have 5 million Facebook users. How do you know that you choose 500? A sample size is the number of units in your sample. Sample size can be a significant impact on the quality of your research and findings. So sample sizes that are too small can lead to incorrect findings. As a result, sample size calculations are performed to determine how large your sample size needs to be to avoid incorrect findings. So if you have 5 million, it's a formula that you do. It's not just like 10% or 5%. It's actually a statistical formula that you do to figure that out. The calculations can be very complex, but usually there are applications to do it. And that formula is beyond this course, of course. But just to let you know that there is a way to figure out the sample size that you need to have in order to make your research valid. So within sampling, there are two main sampling techniques: probability and non-probability. And within the two sampling techniques, there are several methods. So probability sample is using random selection to select units from your population, and there's an equal chance is the same as probability of selecting each unit from the population. So one method is simple random sample. This is every unit is assigned a number, then the researcher randomly selects the numbers. So it's 13 of you in the class, and everyone has a number. And then I take a piece of paper and write everybody's number on it, tear it in pieces, and put it in a hat. Shake it up, and then I pick out, let's say I wanted 5 people. So that's a simple random sample. Systematic random sampling is every unit is assigned a number, just like in a simple random sample. Then the researcher randomly picks one number, and then every number from the list. So this is everybody has a number, and I pick a number, and I decide the number is 3. So I pick 5. So every third number I pick again. So I pick 5. So 6, 7, 8. Then I pick 8. Then 9, 10, 11. So I pick 11. So that's systematic random sampling. Okay, the second sampling technique is non-probability sample. The selections are based on subjective judgment of the researcher. So this would be a convenience sample. So when units are selected because they are easier to access. So say I wanted to do research on JMU students, and I teach 3 classes. So instead of, going out and trying to recruit people for the research from on campus, I just sample the students in my class to represent the students at JMU. That's a convenient sample. And a note that non-probability sample is not as looked at as the quality is as good as probability sampling. But sometimes that's the only way you can get the data that you need. Self-selecting sampling, units are chosen to participate in the research on their own accord. So say I put a post up saying I'm looking for people to participate in this survey. It's free pizza and things of that nature, and people sign up to participate. This is self-selection sampling. And then you have snowballing sampling. So existing units recruit other units from among their acquaintances. So you guys are in my class. I want JMU students. So I ask you to ask your friends, like in other majors, to participate in this research. And that would be snowball sampling. So with all the different types of research and sampling, you still can have errors and biases. One of the errors is coverage errors. So I want to sample a social media network site, but I don't include Facebook. And this is the largest social media network site. So am I really including the correct sample to get effective results? So that's coverage errors. Echo effect. This is duplication of conversations. So sharing to more than one community. So say I'm a blogger and I'm posting about fashion, and that's what someone is researching, and I post the same post or conversation in several different fashion blogs. And as a researcher, I'm going and collecting this data, and it's duplication of conversations from the same person. Sampling bias. This can lead to your sample being unrepresentative of the population you're interested in, like how I said, using the students in my class if I wanted to study JMU students. Another example, say you want to measure how often residents in New York go to Broadway shows in a given year. So you're standing along Broadway and asking people as they pass by how often they go to Broadway shows in a given year. But that would not make sense because a higher proportion of those passing by are likely to have possibly just come out of a show. So the sample would be therefore biased and skewed. So here ends this lecture on advertising research and information gathering.